that based partly on personal experience on what's needed?
Yes, and from many different angles. UCB was created really 5 years ago out of 3 entities getting together, part of the old UCB, a German company called Schwarzpharma and a leading biotech company called Sauquet. So a third of our history is actually university spin-off. In 1980, there was a university spin-off from Imperial College that became Sauquet and is now UCB. So we are, it was 1980. It took 13 years for us to get our first product to the market. We just 13 years to get the first product to the market. We got it both in the US and in Europe last year. So it is indeed about persistence. And meanwhile, there was a lot of partnership and persistence and hurdles and setbacks and to overcome. So I think persistence is definitely a must. There is, as I mentioned, I have another hat, which is personally, in addition to my CEO job, I created a fund more than a year ago, which stimulates the creation of companies. So it's called Caring Entrepreneurship Fund in the field of health. And why the field of health? Because that was before the crisis, but I really felt that with the aging of the population, there is a huge opportunity. Of course, with my other hat, I'm dealing very much with health. There is huge opportunity to stimulate creation of companies in the field of health. Consumers are getting older, very different needs. Alzheimer is huge unmet need, but it will take a while. So we will deal with hundreds of millions of people with Alzheimer in the US and in Europe. Huge opportunity, huge need, huge opportunity. How different needs.
Is this a VC fund?
Say it again?
Is this a venture capital?
It's not a VC fund. It's helping, it comes before the VC. It's helping really the startup. So it's somebody that has an idea and want to start that company. And that's where we come in and help. And I tell you, that's why I say, I know for a fact there is more money. There is money available because today we have more money than candidates. And I know for a fact that other business angel type of partners in France or in the US are in the same situation. Now, it's not the VC, right? It's pre-VC. It's really helping. So we're not taking huge sum of money. We're mostly talking coaching, having academia helping, forming them into their entrepreneurship skills, training, legal advice. It's all this, putting the business plan together, knowing your competition. It's all that pre-creation dimension. And so, it does require high energy to get there, but there is, money available to do that.
I find that rather astonishing that it's not spent. Maybe we can do something about that.
Yeah, because we are not known, but there are a lot of things that are not known.
Well, okay. So, Alfons, you were talking about retraining, re-skills.
Yeah. The point is the following. When you are a researcher, you've been trained to acquire success according to certain rules. You know how to perform certain tasks, you do that right. And when I mention change of frame of mind and change of skills, it means that you have to, in a sense, reset the whole internal software program, which means that you have to become resilient in a different way. When you're conducting research, you're actually following one track, you know exactly what you're doing, and you suppose that at the end of the day, you'll come out with something valuable for the research community. But when you're developing a management project, it means developing a business plan, etc. It means that you have developed a completely different sort of skills, which I might not label them as soft because they are extremely hard to acquire. I mean, to become resilient when you develop a business project, it means that you have to be persistent in a completely different way. It means that you have to become a seller. And a researcher has never been trained to become a seller. In a sense, research speaks for itself to a certain community. Whereas when you become an entrepreneur, you have to sell that idea, that project. And in that sense, developing a consistent narrative, something that really attracts your audience, persuades them that you have something in your pocket that is valuable, is extremely important to convince VCs and other stakeholders. To give you an example, we put together MBAs with people coming from a Polytechnic Institute in Barcelona. We call the event speed dating. Those who have the better narrative are those who can actually match MBA projects with scientific research projects. Otherwise, it's difficult for them to connect.
But if I might ask, why should researchers be trained in this kind of thing anyway? I mean, isn't it rather like training a baker to make bicycles? I mean, they're relatively, one would think, unrelated.
Well, the other option is that at the end of the day, what you have to have is this kind of business plan, business project, something that can be communicated to a certain community. If you cannot do that yourself, certainly you have to associate with someone who can do that. And that's the other argument, to partner with someone that is able to make this kind of bridging constantly.
Which is the point that Cyril was making.
Exactly.
There is another idea, not to be alone, is to make a team with other associates coming from business school. It's possible to make speed dating, as you say, to have an associate, the scientific student or the scientific researcher, and a business student coming from a business school, and it's worked well.
Well, okay, but I don't think we fully answered the question of the title of what we're talking about. That is to say, given this economic climate, is there something new? Some kind of new structure that's needed? Some kind of new co-financing initiatives between the public and private sector? Something new on taxation that affects capital formation? I don't know. Given that this is an economic crisis, what do you do? Marja?
There are other important factors that you alluded to already, and maybe the other panelists can elaborate them, but I would like to highlight the importance of the position of the government. How are they spending the national budget? And I have a very good example. My country, Finland, went to its worst recession at the beginning of the 90s, and this was the worst recession in 100 years. That was a complete catastrophe. The unemployment rose in a couple of months from negligible to 20%. There was a wave of bankruptcies, and the banks started to wobble. And that was due to some global factors, but also to the fall of Soviet Union. Finland, the private sectors had very, very advantageous deals with the Soviet Union state. No risk, low quality, okay, big volumes. All this was wiped out overnight. So what did the government do? They decided to invest in education, research and development. And so within 10 years the country started to appear at the top levels of competitiveness rankings, etc. So this proved to be a very, very clever decision at that time, and I have been remembering that many times, as now we hear news about governments and ministers of research and education cutting the research sector budgets.